If you're having trouble landing your first UX, UI, product, or even graphic design role, spending hours applying for full-time jobs and getting rejection after rejection, or no response at all, I completely understand, as I was in the same boat. Today, I'd like to share what worked for me that finally got my foot in the door of the design industry, and what worked for me to act as that crucial stepping stone towards finally getting a full-time design role. So, let's dive in. All right, so today we're going to be discussing a concept called freelancing. According to a quick internet search, a freelancer is someone who works independently rather than with an agency or for a company. I'm sure that many of you know what a freelancer is, but just in case, wanted to go ahead and get the official internet definition, just so that we all know what we're working with here. Cool, so just to start this video, I'm gonna share a little quick anecdote about myself, and then I will kind of get into my reasoning for making the video and making the case for freelancing. So for a while, before I started freelancing, I was actually pretty hesitant to give it a try for a few reasons. Number one, and this is definitely the biggest, is the lack of a stable, reliable income source. Freelancing can be a bit volatile, especially if you are not someone who is particularly good at going and being proactive about finding new clients and so on and so forth. So it can be a little bit unstable in terms of the income, and you're not getting a guaranteed paycheck. Number two was not knowing what type of work I'd be doing or if I'd enjoy it. I will say right off the bat that this hesitancy was a little bit misplaced, because you actually have quite a bit more ability to kind of be picky about what projects and what clients you want to work with when you are contracting. You're not forced to take on any projects or work with any clients that you don't necessarily want to. So this hesitancy ended up being a little bit, misplaced and not accurate, but it was a hesitancy at first nonetheless. Number three is kind of similar to number one. I didn't really want to have the pressure of always having to chase down new clients. I very much have like a set it and forget it sort of personality. So I kind of like for things to just be, once I figure them out the first time, I kind of just like for them to be figured out and set, and I can just roll with it like that. Overall, I would say that for all these reasons, for the longest time, freelancing just didn't quite feel like it was a thing for me. So how did I end up freelancing anyway? My job search as a recent college grad just simply wasn't yielding any results. I was submitting application after application, trying really hard, just trying to land a full-time role however I could, but nothing was panning out. And quite frankly, I was just getting desperate for something to work or something to start bringing in some money. And so finally, out of that desperation, I decided to just say, screw it, I'm going to take my chance and I'm going to give freelancing a shot. So what I did was I went onto a website called Upwork, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. And it is basically a website where people can post all sorts of jobs for freelancers and contractors to submit proposals for. And yeah, it's really a website intended for freelancers to thrive. So I went onto Upwork. I searched for UX UI design, and I was pretty amazed, honestly. The results page had literally like 200 or 300 results of posts of people looking for UX UI design related work. Wow, all these people out there need this type of work, and here I am looking for this type of work. So it really felt like, the first moment of kind of hope that I had in my job search, that maybe I can snag one or two of these for myself. And just to put a quick disclaimer right here, just to be crystal clear, I have absolutely no affiliation with Upwork except for having been a freelancer on there myself, but Upwork is absolutely not paying me to make this video. I am simply sharing what happened to work for me, and that just so happened to be Upwork. So to keep the story going, I spent some time submitting my first proposals for some of the open jobs that I found on Upwork that felt like I might be a good fit for. After submitting a few proposals, I started to get a pretty good, or at least decent, formula down for how to write a compelling proposal, even with sort of my lack of real world experience that I was really trying to work around. I still managed to find a way to write proposals that were, I guess, compelling enough. And so before long, I landed my first couple interviews, and then long story short, I eventually landed my first paid contract, and then eventually another. So this was mind-blowing to me. It was the first time I was ever being paid actual money to design something. And it was kind of surreal, it felt pretty amazing. This was like what I had gone to school for and worked hard for. And so finally, money was being exchanged for my design work. And then long story short, through one of those contracts that I found on Upwork, eventually I met someone who would become my networking contact for my first full-time UX design role. And so anyways, I share this anecdote about Upwork and freelancing based in my own experience to let you know that, in my opinion, freelancing is a viable way to get your foot in the door of the design industry in lieu of trying to have a full-time role be your first foot in the door opportunity. Now, why is that so? I recommend freelancing to brand new designers because something that I call barrier to entry is slightly lower than it is at established companies or startups. And so you might be asking me, what is this phrase that I just used called barrier to entry? So a barrier to entry in this particular context is essentially an obstacle or a requirement that precludes you from doing something or getting to where you want to be. For example, a full-time design role within our context. So as a designer who is brand new to the design industry, multiple things can contribute to this barrier of entry that I'm talking about. Number one, that is by far the biggest, is just simply lack of experience. You come across job posts that are asking for 3 years, 4 years, 7 years, even 1 year. And as a brand new designer, the fact of the matter is that you simply don't have that. And so that is, that's a big barrier to you trying to apply for that role or that opportunity because you simply don't meet that requirement. And then number two is that a less developed and less impressive portfolio is another big barrier. And, it's really a byproduct of number one, because if you don't have the opportunity to work in a real world projects, how are you supposed to sort of improve your portfolio with these impressive case studies if you don't have the chance to get that experience and work on those projects in the first place? And so established companies and even many startups tend to have a pretty hard wall up around those two requirements, experience as well as the portfolio piece. And so hence, these things act as your barrier to entry into the field. They are literally your barrier and you simply cannot get through. It's basically essentially acting like a wall. That being said, for some reason, in my own experience, I found that freelance design work does often tend to be a bit more forgiving of not having as much experience or as impressive of a portfolio. In other words, I've found that barrier to entry that I keep mentioning to getting freelance work isn't quite as high or insurmountable as it is when you're applying to large established companies or startups for those full-time roles. And in short, in my opinion, again, this is all my opinion, but you do have a slightly, maybe significantly higher chance of landing actual real world work as a brand new designer doing freelancing than you do applying simply for these full-time roles that you find on job posts or job boards at these established companies or even startups if you're someone who's brand new to the industry. So if you do decide that you want to give freelancing a try, it's important to have the right mindset, because if you're like me and you feel like freelancing maybe isn't really for you, you have to try to keep in mind, if you do decide to give it a shot, that it's not something you have to commit to forever. The real reason for doing this is that as you land jobs and contracts as a freelancer, you can track your process, your design process. You can take note of what you work on, keep your sketches, keep your testing, so on and so forth. And for each project you work on, you can then go and take those and turn those into case studies, strong, hopefully strong case studies for your design portfolio. Those same case studies will then become your golden ticket that you do not currently have, most likely, or you might, but chances are high that if you're brand new, you may not have this currently. And so the freelancing projects essentially will give you those golden ticket case studies, real world projects that you can write up about and add to your portfolio. And that's going to be that real world experience in your portfolio that is essentially replacing those hypothetical school projects that you may have in there right now, those hypothetical bootcamp projects that you may have in there right now. And they'll just be a whole lot more powerful when the time comes that you do feel ready and prepared to go and start trying to apply for the full-time roles again. And so this is exactly what I did while freelancing. Again, I started freelancing directly after college, essentially. after kind of, again, failing a little bit in my full-time role, salaried role job hunt. But the freelancing really did help a lot, again, to get those real world projects. And then in my case, it also helped to actually get networking connections that led also to my eventual first full-time role. So networking is also a big opportunity that you can kind of get through freelancing, again, with a lower barrier to entry to get into a freelance gig in the first place. Those full-time projects absolutely helped to bolster my portfolio, and then also helped me to get some connections that I simply didn't have when I started. All right, so I would love to hear from you guys on this. Have you tried freelancing, and did it work for you? Would you agree that this concept I've discussed called a barrier to entry is lower for freelance work than just flat out applying for like full-time roles that maybe might have a little bit of a harder time getting in if you don't have that experience and if your portfolio isn't quite as impressive? I would love to hear from you, and I'd love to read your thoughts. So definitely share them in the comments below. And then just as a side note, if you would like to see a video at some point with some of my high-level Upwork tips for brand new designers, some of the things that worked for me when I was first starting out to land those first contracts, let me know in the comments as well, as I would be happy to put together a video on that at some point as well, if there's enough interest. All right, that is it for this one. If you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe and adjust those notification settings to be notified of all future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Peace. Hey, thanks so much for checking out this video. If you are an early career designer in need of some career advice, perhaps some resume guidance, or some portfolio feedback, maybe all of the above, I offer one-on-one mentoring services, and I would absolutely love to meet you and help you out however I can. So check out the link in the description for more info.